Birthdays hit different when you're past 75. At my age, I don't expect balloons, cake, or surprises. My joints ache louder than any party music, and I usually prefer a quiet dinner with my wife, Linda. But this year, my son surprised me. Well, kind of. The UPS man rang the bell, handed me a brown package, and there it was. A bottle of whiskey. A fancy one, too. The label screamed expensive, the type of thing you don't pick up at the corner liquor store. I chuckled. Whiskey. The irony was too perfect. You see, I haven't touched hard liquor in over 30 years. Doctor's orders, blood pressure, cholesterol, all the usual suspects that come with being a senior. My son knows this, or at least he should have known. Still, I admired the thought. The bottle looked nice sitting on the table, but to me, it was nothing more than decoration. That evening, we had dinner with my father-in-law, old George. He's 85, stubborn as a mule, but sharp as a tack. George has always loved his whiskey, savoring it like it's liquid gold. So naturally, I thought, why not give it to someone who'll appreciate it? I handed him the bottle after dinner. Happy early Christmas, George. This one's from me. The old man's eyes lit up brighter than a child on Christmas morning. He hugged me. That was worth more than the whiskey itself. I didn't think much of it until the next day. The phone rang. It was my son. Dad, so how was the whiskey? He asked, excitement in his voice. I chuckled, completely honest. Oh, I gave it to your FIL. He loves it. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. You did what? He shouted so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. And just like that, a family storm began brewing. My son didn't take it well. In fact, he sounded more offended than if I had poured the whiskey straight down the drain. Dad, he said, his voice clipped. Sharp, do you have any idea how much that bottle cost? I blinked. No. Should I? It wasn't just whiskey. It was a limited edition Glenfiddich. I spent weeks tracking it down. I wanted you to enjoy it. I sighed. Son, I don't drink whiskey, haven't in years. I thought you knew that. But, he stumbled over his words. But it wasn't about drinking. It was about the gesture, about me giving you something meaningful. And you just gave it away? To your father-in-law? Now, let me explain something. My son and my father-in-law, George, never got along. Oil and water, fire and ice. My son always thought George was judgmental, stuck up, always comparing him to how men used to be. And George thought my son was soft, spoiled by modern life, too quick to complain about stress. So when my son realized his gift ended up in George's hands, he wasn't just mad, he was furious. Do you know what he's probably doing right now? My son fumed. He's sitting there laughing at me, gloating that you gave him my gift. Now, I said, trying to calm him. George was grateful. He loved it. That's the problem, Dad. You don't see it. He's probably waving it around like some trophy, telling everyone how you chose him over your own son. The conversation ended badly. He hung up after muttering, "Unbelievable." I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the silent receiver. All I could think was, how did a simple gift turn into a declaration of war? A week later, we had a family dinner at my house. Everyone came. My son, his wife, my daughter, her kids, and of course, George. I should have known trouble was coming. When George walked in holding the whiskey bottle like a prized possession. Best gift I've had in years. He boomed, setting it right in the center of the table. Finally, someone knows what I like. My son's jaw tightened so hard I thought his teeth might crack. Throughout dinner, George poured himself a glass, humming happily. Ah, smooth. You know, some people waste money on fancy labels, but this one's quality. My son shot me a look that could have cut glass. Halfway through the meal, he exploded. "Why don't you just admit it, Dad?" he snapped, slamming his fork down. "You never wanted the gift. You just pawned it off." The room went quiet. I set my fork down slowly. I didn't pawn it off. I gave it to someone who would appreciate it. That's not waste. That's thoughtfulness. Thoughtfulness! He nearly shouted the word. You know what it feels like? It feels like you're saying my gift wasn't good enough, that I'm not good enough. Linda, my wife, tried to mediate. Now, come on! It was a misunderstanding. No, my son snapped. It's not just this. It's every time. Every time I try to do something special for you, you dismiss it. You always have some excuse. And then you hand it off to George of all people? George chuckled, sipping his whiskey. Well, I don't mind being the favorite. That little jab was gasoline on the fire. My son stood up so fast his chair toppled over. You know what? Forget it. I'm done trying. Clearly, nothing I do is ever good enough for this family. He stormed out, his wife trailing behind him, apologizing over her shoulder. The room stayed frozen for a moment. George, unfazed, poured himself another drink. More for me, he muttered. But I wasn't laughing. No, something twisted in my gut. Because in that moment, I realized. My son wasn't just angry about the whiskey. This was deeper. This was years of resentment bubbling up. And if I didn't do something, that bottle of whiskey would become the crack that split this family in two. Later that night, I got a text from my daughter. Dad, be careful. He thinks you gave it away on purpose to embarrass him in front of George. I stared at the screen. Me? Embarrass him? But the more I thought about it, the more I saw his side. To him, it wasn't just whiskey. It was a symbol. He wanted to prove. He could give me something meaningful, something that showed thought. Instead, I made it look like his gift didn't matter at all. So maybe I needed to teach him a lesson. Not out of cruelty, but out of love. If he thought a bottle of whiskey could define our relationship, then I'd show him what real value looked like. And that's when the idea for my revenge, gentle but unforgettable, began to take shape. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my recliner staring at the quiet living room. The half-empty whiskey bottle sat on the counter like a trophy George had forgotten. Every time I looked at it, I didn't see whiskey. I saw my son's face, red with anger, jaw clenched, voice cracking with hurt. I knew my boy. He wasn't really mad about the whiskey. He was mad because he felt invisible. Like all his life, no matter what he did, someone else stole the spotlight. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't entirely wrong. But did he have to scream at me in front of the whole family? Did he have to make me look like some ungrateful old fool? No. That part needed fixing. That's when the idea started forming in my head. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about burning bridges or screaming matches. At my age, revenge has to be clever, quiet, and memorable. Something that doesn't just hurt. It teaches. So I thought, what if I gave my son a gift? Something he couldn't just brush off. Something that would force him to see the difference between a flashy bottle of whiskey and real meaning. And then it hit me. I would give him something no bottle could ever compete with. Something that would make him stop and think about who really values who in this family. Step 1. The disguise of silence. I decided not to chase him, not yet. For the next few weeks, I played it cool. No calls, no texts, no apologies. Let him stew. Let him believe I didn't care, that I had dismissed the whole thing. But quietly, I was planning. I started digging through old boxes in the attic, dusty photo albums, letters from when he was in college, a few drawings he'd made in grade school, stick figures of him and me holding hands. I even found an old baseball glove we used to toss around when he was a kid. The leather cracked, the laces worn, but still holding strong. Piece by piece, I collected memories. Proof of our bond. Proof that I hadn't dismissed him. Not then, not ever. Step 2. The gift. I bought a wooden box. Polished oak, sturdy, with a brass latch. Inside, I carefully placed each item. The photo of us fishing on the lake when he was 10. The glove, cleaned and oiled. A letter I wrote by hand telling him what he meant to me. How proud I was of, the man he'd become, even if I didn't always say it. And finally, the whiskey bottle. Empty now, but with a note rolled inside it. The note read, "Son, you thought I gave away your gift without care. The truth is, gifts aren't about the bottle or the price. They're about who holds them, who remembers them, and what they mean. This empty bottle is proof. Whiskey is gone in a sip, but family lasts longer than any drink." Step 3. The stage. Of course, a gift like that couldn't just be handed over casually. No, it needed a stage, a moment that would stick. So I planned it for Thanksgiving. Everyone would be there. The table would be full, the air thick with turkey, gravy, and unresolved tension. The perfect backdrop. And when the moment came, I'd present my son with the box, not privately, not in secret, but in front of everyone, George included. Because sometimes revenge isn't about cutting someone down. Sometimes it's about lifting the curtain so everyone sees the truth. As the day approached, I admit, I wavered. Was I being too harsh? Would this feel like rubbing salt in the wound instead of teaching a lesson? But then I remembered his words at that dinner table. Nothing I do is ever good enough. That stung. Because it wasn't true. And I was determined to prove it. He needed to see that he'd always been good enough. Always. But he also needed to see that love and respect can't be measured by dollar signs or rare whiskey labels. So the plan stayed in place. When Thanksgiving finally arrived, the house filled with the smell of roasted turkey and the sound of clattering dishes. Family poured in, laughter bouncing off the walls, but beneath it all, I felt the tension. My son walked in with his wife, polite but distant. He avoided my eyes, busying himself with setting the casserole on the counter. George arrived, too, grinning as always. "Got any more whiskey, Harold?" he teased, giving my son a wink. My son's jaw tightened again. Perfect. The stage was set. I smiled politely, saying nothing, because tonight, silence would speak louder than any outburst. The turkey was carved, the mashed potatoes passed around, and yet the tension at the table could be cut with the dullest butter. Knife. George, bless his oblivious soul, was on his second helping of stuffing and his third story about back in my day. The grandkids laughed politely, my daughter rolled her eyes, and my son kept his head down, stabbing his green beans like they'd personally offended him. I watched quietly. I'd waited weeks for this moment, and it was finally here. When dessert. Plates cleared, I cleared my throat. "Before we end the night, I have something to share." All eyes turned to me. Even George paused mid-sip of coffee. My son looked up warily, like a man expecting another punch. I reached under the sideboard and pulled out the wooden box. Oak gleamed under the dining room light, brass latch shining like it was daring someone to open it. "This," I said, placing it in the center of the table, "is for my son." His eyes narrowed. "What is it?" "Open it," I said simply. He hesitated, then unlatched the box. The lid creaked open, and silence fell. First, his fingers brushed the old baseball glove. He froze. "You kept this?" His voice was quiet, almost disbelieving. "I did," I said. "Remember? You begged me to play catch every evening, even when I was bone-tired from work. That glove hasn't left my attic since." He swallowed, eyes darting to the photo of us fishing. He picked it up with trembling hands. "You were 10, I said softly. "Caught a catfish bigger than your arm. You told me it was the best day of your life." My daughter leaned closer, whispering, "I remember that trip." He set the photo down almost too carefully, like it might break. Then he unfolded the handwritten letter. His eyes scanned the page, and his lips parted as he read my words silently. And then, finally, he reached for the empty whiskey bottle with the rolled-up note inside. His hands shook as he pulled the cork, sliding the note free. He read aloud, "Son, you thought I gave away your gift without care. The truth is, gifts aren't about the bottle or the price. They're about who holds them, who remembers them, and what they mean. This empty bottle is proof. Whiskey is gone in a sip, but family lasts longer than any drink." The room was silent. No clinking of silverware, no hum of chatter, just stillness. My son's eyes glistened, though he tried to blink it away. "Dad, I didn't know you kept all this." "I kept everything that mattered," I said firmly. "You thought I didn't appreciate your gift because I passed it along. But son, I didn't pass it off. I passed it forward. Because gifts aren't about ownership. They're about meaning. George loved that whiskey in a way I couldn't. But nothing could replace what you've given me over the years." George, surprisingly, cleared his throat. "Boy," he said gruffly, "your father's right. You've been chasing the wrong kind of value." He raised his coffee mug in a toast. This box, it's worth more than any bottle." My daughter dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Even the grandkids looked moved, though one whispered, "I still think the whiskey was cool," but my son wasn't letting me off that easily. "So why didn't you just say that, Dad? Why did you let me think you didn't care?" I leaned forward, steady. "Because sometimes words aren't enough. Sometimes you have to feel the weight of what matters. You needed to see it, to hold it, to understand that flashy labels don't measure love." He ran a hand over his face. I guess I let my pride get in the way. I just wanted to give you something special, something to show I care." I reached across the table, placing my hand on his. "You already did. You've been giving me special things my whole life, and none of them came in a bottle." His lips pressed tight, and then finally, slowly, he nodded. "Dad, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled. I shouldn't have made it about me." I squeezed his hand. "And I'm sorry too, son. I should have told you what your gift meant, even if I couldn't drink it. But I promise you this. You will never be not good enough to me." The tension broke like a wave receding from shore. The kids relaxed. My daughter smiled, and even George raised his glass, this time without smugness. "To family," George said. My son clinked his glass against his, then turned to me. "To lessons that stick." And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I saw peace in his eyes. The night after Thanksgiving, when the dishes were finally washed and the house was quiet again, I sat back in my recliner with a cup of tea. No whiskey, of course, just tea. I thought about what had happened at the table, about the way my son's voice cracked when he read my note, the way his hand trembled on that old baseball glove, the way his pride finally melted enough for me to see the boy I once knew. It struck me, revenge doesn't have to be cruel. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is showing someone the truth in a way they'll never forget. And that's what I had done. In the days that followed, I noticed a change. My son started calling more often. Not about work, not about bills, not even about sports, just to talk. One morning he called and said, "Dad, I was thinking about that fishing trip. Do you think we could do something like that with my kids? I want them to have memories like I had." I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. "Of course, son. We'll dust off the rods and take them out as soon as the weather's good." George, for once, stopped bragging about the whiskey. In fact, he said something surprising a week later. "You know, Harold," he muttered, "that was a damn clever thing you did. That boy needed to see the bigger picture." And my daughter? She told me privately, "Dad, I think you saved the family that night. I've never seen him look at..." You like that before. I'll admit, I went back and forth about what I did. Some people might say I manipulated the situation. Some might argue I embarrassed my son in front of the family. But here's the thing. My son and I had been talking past each other for years. He wanted to prove his love with expensive gestures. I wanted him to understand that love doesn't need a price tag. Words hadn't worked, so I used the only tool left, a lesson wrapped in memories. And you know what? It worked. That box didn't just hold photos and an old glove. It held a mirror. It forced my son to see that he had always been good enough. Not because of what he bought, but because of who he was. That was my revenge. Not to hurt him, but to wake him up. To turn his anger into understanding. If you've stuck with me through this whole story, here's what I want you to take away. Gifts don't have to be expensive to matter. The most valuable ones can't be bought in stores. Family conflicts run deep, but sometimes all it takes is one moment of honesty to break years of tension. Revenge doesn't always mean payback. Sometimes it means teaching a lesson the other person will never forget. I could have shouted back at my son. I could have told him to grow up, to stop whining about a bottle of whiskey. But would that have changed anything? No. It would have just deepened the cracks. Instead, I gave him something he couldn't argue with. Proof. Memories. Love in its purest form. So here's the question for you, dear listeners. Was I wrong? Was I wrong for giving away his whiskey in the first place? Knowing he'd be hurt? Was I wrong for staging that dramatic reveal at Thanksgiving? Or was I right to turn a bottle of whiskey into a lifelong lesson about what really matters? I'll let you decide. If you're watching this and you've ever had a family fight spiral out of control over something small, a gift, a word, a misunderstanding, then you know how dangerous pride can be. But if this story resonated with you, if it made you laugh, or tear up, or think twice about your own family, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more true stories and family drama. And most importantly, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that love matters more than labels. Because at the end of the day, whiskey gets poured out, gifts gather dust, but family is what lasts. And that's one truth I'll keep passing forward as long as I live.